Pippa, let me ask you, when Sam, you've done now 4 or 5 movies together. Which one
so
is
we've had a company together for 20 years now. Obviously, I was a child when we started, but we actually grew up together. So what's very odd about this film is that we lived through this period together as children, and lived through his mum kind of disintegrating, which is obviously at the heart of the story. Olivia's character is really based on his mum and her mental health struggles. So it's been a very odd process watching this come to life on screen.
Was it very different because it was so personal for Sam?
Yes, and it's the first script he's written completely on his own. When we did 1917, Christy Wilson-Cairns and he worked together on that script, but this was something that kind of had been percolating away, and then rather alarmingly for any producers in the audience who work with directors, your director says, actually, I've written something of my own. And you think, oh no, that could be really terrible. But actually it was extraordinarily good, even as a first draft, and the finished film is probably 95% that first draft. So it just kind of came out fully formed.
And Olivia, he called you one day and said, you have no choice but to do this part. I wrote it for you without you asking. But that's a huge compliment.
Yes, it's a big compliment and a bit scary. I heard that he wanted to have a Zoom meeting with me. Sam Mendes wants to Zoom you. And it was in my kitchen, but we talked nothing about the film. I didn't know what it was. He just said, I've been writing something and thinking of you. And I went, okay, great. Yes. And then I realised I probably shouldn't have said yes until I'd read it. But luckily, when the script came through, I was really excited. And it was a part I'd never played before. And it made me nervous, which is always quite a nice feeling, weirdly. So actually, it turned out all right.
And what was it that made you nervous? I mean, number one, you're on the set with the director and you're playing someone inspired by his mom. That in itself is kind of nerve-wracking, but there were that plus what other elements?
Well, if anyone who had witnessed schizophrenia, bipolar, or had suffered with those issues, I wanted to do it justice for them. I didn't want to let down Sam, and the great thing for me was that Sam had been an observer of this every day of his life, and as an only child with a single mum, he watched every moment of it, and he was worried by a change in eye makeup could signify a change in, her trajectory. So I had him to go. So when you stop lithium, and he could describe everything, he could help me. So I had him holding my hands every step of the way, which was brilliant.
And how early did Trent and Atticus, did you start talking to Sam about this? From what I understand, you were working on the score well before you actually saw any film.
Well, like Olivia mentioned, we had a Zoom as well, and I think the first one was probably, my memory's bad, but let's say it was 6 months before or 4 months before.
Before the camera was.
Yeah, before the camera was picked up. And then we got into this thing of we'd Zoom for a couple of hours every 2 weeks or so. And then the last couple of months, we'd got to a point where, he knew where he was going to shoot and the script was in a place, and he'd shared enough with us that we were able to kind of do some kind of improvisations around the base and find the kind of world, like world building in terms of the sonic world that this score might sit in and feel appropriate to tell the emotional story.
And, sorry, Pippa.
I was just going to say, one of the things that was most extraordinary was because these guys had, as they say, had laid down quite a lot of music before we started shooting. So when we started shooting, Sam was listening to their music as we shot, which I'd never experienced before, and he hadn't either. And he found it extraordinarily helpful because it kind of shaped the music, shaped the way he shot it, which is just, really unusual.
And Olivia, I wanted to get into the set design a little bit, and I know Pippa, you'll have a lot to say about creating the Empire Cinema out of an existing structure there. But I wanted to talk to you about Hillary's apartment, because I just saw it for the second time, and there are so many details which she scribbled on the wall and things like that. And I just wondered what elements were there that helped you build the character, and how much of it was inspired on what you were building yourself?
So during rehearsal, Sam had told us, when you see all the food jars upside down and everything's bleeding down, during one sort of episode of his mum's, he went to bed, he could hear it all happening, and he came downstairs, and all of the food jars were open and upside down. And when he walked onto the set first, he said, "May I?" And they went, yeah, sure. And he did it and rearranged it, and he did the painting of the writing on the wall as he remembered it. And she was a very intelligent woman, and when she was on the up, sort of so powerful and so lucid and amazing, and all the books that she had were there, and he took them all off the bookshelf and piled them on the floor as he remembered them. So for me, going in, I could have a look around and open everything and look at everything, and I'd already heard about it from our rehearsals, and it was really moving and he was very moved by it all, that it was as he remembered. And actually the kitchen table, this is a complete non sequitur, I'm so sorry, but I like to take a little something from each job.
Do you?
Yeah, I do ask. And I bought the kitchen table to have, which is maybe a bit weird, but...
Olivia, can you talk a little bit about your working relationship with Michael? And I know you were super excited about doing sex scenes, for one thing.
Yeah. Michael's very sorry he's not here, by the way. Yes, no, I begged Sam to take out all the sex scenes because I find them incredibly embarrassing. Michael was much more mature than me, and we just got on so well. He's like Tigger. He's so happy. He wants to learn everything. He's loving the way everybody works. He loves learning from everybody. And he said, we're going to be fine. We've got each other. We'll be fine. But we had Ita O'Brien, who is a intimacy coordinator, who was a total game changer. And we were at drama school together, so she knows me well and knows that I'm incredibly embarrassed by everything. And she turned it all into a dance routine. And she said, what do you not want to show? And I said, absolutely nothing. So I was fully clothed all the time, and everything's sort of the imagination from there down. And she would be offset going, and 1 and 2, and a hand down the leg. So she was brilliant. She made it fun and easy and made us comfortable with each other. But Michael was just a joy. And thank God he was confident, because otherwise we'd never have got through it.
You and Michael, I talked to you, I guess it was yesterday, for my Sirius XM show, and I love this tidbit that the scene at the beach, when he's running naked into the surf and trips and falls, was a mistake, and then Sam he did it perfectly many times, and then Sam
5 times, and it's a really long way to the sea, so this poor guy is running, everything flapping about, running to the sea. And then, of course, they go cut, and he has to run back, and we all politely look the other way. And the one time he ran and fell, but he carried on, but he had sand in his eyes, he was running the rest of the way with his eyes closed. And we said, Sam's going to keep that take, that's the one he's going to use, and sure enough, he did.
And Trent and Atticus, what was the piece of music or scene that you discussed the most? Whether it was contentious or just hard to get right, or that everybody had differing opinions on it, what was the most difficult one to make a final decision on?
The opening scene was tough to get right.
When she's opening up the theater.
Yeah, just introducing the cinema, the feel, and that was a bit tricky. Unquestionably the hardest one to get, which nearly broke us, was watching being there in the cinema. Because we sit around and think, man, wouldn't it be great to get a film where there's runway where the music can be featured in a way, and then this came up when we realized there's about 3 or 4 minutes of watching someone watch a movie, and the music has to, certainly your acting does all the hard work, but we need to frame that in a way that can, that is worthy of being with that. And I think we composed 15 fully arranged different suites of music for that scene. And a couple before the final, I was convinced this is the one. Because our method is to, once we make some cerebral decisions about instruments, and there's the reality of how long it has to be and what has to happen at what point, then it's just try to get lost in the emotion and mine a place that where you're in there crying and feeling, and about the 13th time, it felt like I came in, I'm like, tears in my eyes. I have the raw material for this. And then the next day when we played it for Sam, yeah, it's good. What if? But that then it becomes an exercise in patience and letting go of ego. And the reality is, what's in there, I think, is beautiful and is way better. And we wouldn't have gotten there had we not been pushed there by Sam. It was one of the real kind of learning experiences we had working with him on this film.
One of the I missed the first time I watched the movie. It was on a small screen, but seeing it on the big screen tonight with the sound and everything, I noticed that in the scene where Hillary is exposing him to his wife and the big confrontation during the premiere, we hear really faintly the theme from Chariots of Fire in the background. And
So good.
the volume of that is so perfect because it's really faint, but you hear it and it's just great when she's doing that. And I just wanted to know, is that why Chariots of Fire was chosen, just so you could play that song under the meltdown?
It wasn't our decision, but we were laughing right along with you. Every time that comes up, it's a perfect thing for that.
No, I think Sam thought that Chariots of Fire was the perfect film for Donald Ellis, Colin's character, to be unbelievably proud of premiering. And when he sort of puffs up and goes on stage to introduce it, that just felt so perfect. And again, a bit like Being There. Obviously, it came out that year, and there was a premiere just before. If you look at the timeline of our script, the actual premiere was about 2 weeks before in London, so it worked really well.
I want to thank you all for being here. I think we're out of time, but congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
It's a joy. Thank you.